John Constantine, a Hellblazer podcast.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to John Constantine, a Hellblazer podcast. Today we are reading Hellblazer number 147, and just a little catch up on what's been going on. In the last issue, we started the Brian Azzarello run, which started John off in an American prison, and we don't even know how he got there, what's going on. He just is in prison, and surprisingly, he doesn't seem worried about this at all. It's almost like he wanted to be here or something. And when he first got there, he met another prisoner named Trailer, who has his own motives. Obviously, he wants to make John like his new prison wife or something, but John seems to be pretending that he doesn't notice that, and he's really playing naive for Trailer. But worry not, we don't know John's plan, but he definitely has one, because at the end of the last issue, after playing dumb the whole time, he borrowed a cigarette from each of Trailer's guys, and when they came to collect in the showers, we saw the men go in, but only John came out. And when Candy, the current prison wife of Trailer, went in to see what happened, we saw the four men that John owed cigarettes to were freaking out on the floor. They had shit themselves, and they were just terrified. And last time I thought there was blood on the floor, but I'm pretty sure it's just supposed to be them having been so scared that they shit themselves. And that's where we left off in the last issue. So first things first, with issue 147, we got the cover. We see the same kind of motif where there's prison bars in the background, and then there's three horizontal panels. At the top, there's a white guy. In the middle, there is Trailer. And in the bottom, there is John. And John is smoking and sitting casually in his room looking out of the bars. And we start off on the first page with a couple of the Aryan Brotherhood white guys walking and talking. And one of them saying, "You sure about this, Carney?" And Carney answers, "You got a better idea? I mean, give me one good reason why we should have to deal with this. Who needs the fucking heat, you know? Besides, the Englishman's everybody's headache, his included." And we also see on this page that the name of the issue is Hard Time Part 2. Then we turn the page and we see the head Aryan Brotherhood guy that was talking walking into a curtained area, and there's a little office that someone has made. He's in shadows. We can't see him, but he's sitting at a desk doing a puzzle. And also in the room with him, there is a black man sitting down in front of his desk. There's a tall white dude with glasses, and there's a muscly white guy that's sitting near the desk as well. And I don't know exactly where we're at because there's a little mini fridge in here and stuff. So it seems that whoever's in the shadows in this office has some sort of deal with the guards or something, because he's running something from here. So as Carney, the Aryan Brotherhood guy, walks in, he sees the other prisoners from the other gangs, and he fixates on the black guy and he says, "What the hell is that monkey doing here?" But the black guy does not stand for that, so he gets up and gets right into Carney's face, and he yells, "I'm here to kick your motherfucking cracker ass, bitch." And then the man at the desk says, "Sit down, boxer." Then we see a Hispanic guy walk in, and he says, "Yo." And the man with glasses turns to him and says, "Come on in, Ignacio." And Ignacio replies, "Hey, Buzz, what with these putas?" And the man in shadow behind the desk answers saying, "These putas want to talk to me. They got a problem. Same one that you got. Figure I'll listen to all your sorry-ass stories in one sitting." And Carney, the guy from the Aryan Brotherhood, is mad about this because he thought he was going to talk to this guy by himself, and apparently there's going to be a representative from a bunch of other gangs here of all different races, and he's not happy about that. So he yells back, "Bullshit! If you expect me to..." But he's cut off by the guy behind the desk who says, "I expect you to shut the fuck up and wait your turn, Carney. You're lucky I'm even interested in what you got to say, you Nazi fuck." And then Boxer, who's the black guy who yelled at Carney earlier, says, "For real, go sit in the corner and jerk your dick, trash." And then the man behind the desk says to Boxer, "Go on, you were saying?" Then we turn the page and we get a flashback to the yard. We're not sure exactly when this is, but we're seeing a bunch of prisoners playing basketball, and Boxer narrates over these panels, "I was telling you, it didn't take long for word to make it round the block. None of us knew what went down in the showers that night, but we all knew whatever it was. It was nasty. Trailer's crew, They were some hard-ass motherfuckers. Don't go down easy, know what I'm saying? But them boys ever since, they even scared to eat. Which is cool, because all they've been doing was shitting themselves. We figured the English boys hooked up like them Guidos. You know, showed them pictures of their kids sleeping and shit, right? Had to be. But the Muslim cats, man, they had other ideas. Way they saw it, our boy was just plain. And before he finishes that sentence, we see in the panels the Muslim Brotherhood guys walking up, and one of them says, evil. And they look like they're kind of determined, like they have a mission. And as we turn the page, we see they are talking to John right now. And John is just casually leaning against the wall, smoking like always. And he says to the man who said he was evil, come again? And the man replies, my brothers and I are not here to mince words with you. And John says, no, I expect not. And the man continues, you may have fooled the other inmates, but it's clear to us what you are, what you represent. Evil. And then John takes a big puff of his cigarette and he says, I'll pop in for a visit then? Clue you in about me? And the man gets mad at this because he's Muslim, of course, and he says, do not mock the Most High. And as John blows his smoke upwards, he says, God forbid. And then he starts walking, and instead of walking around these guys, he just walks through them like they don't matter. And he says, it's just, well, me and your Most High, we've never been properly introduced. So I'm wondering why Allah's dragging me name through the mud and all. I mean, he don't know me from Muhammad, right? And as he said that last line, he had turned around back to the men with a big smile on his face, like John's trying to get a rise from them. And it works, because the front man of the Muslim Brotherhood guys backhands John across the face and says, how dare you? And they knock the cigarette out of his mouth, and as John bends down to pick it up and wipes his mouth a little bit, he says, here's how. And then he puts the cigarette butt in his palm, and then it looks like he puts his other hand over it like he's doing a spell or something, and then he closes his hand tight around the cigarette, and he says, magic, hocus pocus. And then John opens his hand, and he shows that the cigarette has disappeared. And the Aryan Brotherhood guy says, you're a magician? And John says, oh, I wouldn't go that far. I know a few tricks is all. It's how I get by, really. Simple sleight of hand. You're wasting your time with me, old son. I mean, brother. And John says that with a big smile on his face, like he knows that's going to piss this guy off too. And John is right. The man does get upset, and he points his finger at John's chest, and he says, you are not my brother, White. But he's cut off by John, who finishes his sentence for him, saying, devil it is, right? Your misery is my fault then, because of the color of me skin? Piss off. And then he hits the man's hand away. And then he reaches in his pocket for some cigarettes, and he says, I swear, you people's theories on racial superiority are every bit as daft as those Nazi blokes. And then we hear a bell chime 3 times, which I guess is supposed to be the call for prayer. Because as John puffs away, he says, oi, prayer time then, mates. On your knees. And the Muslim Brotherhood guy says, this isn't over. And then John walks away from him saying, say, do me a favor, love. While you're conversing with Allah, tell him I don't fancy being whispered about behind my back. Then John walks off completely, and then we see the Muslim Brotherhood guys kneel down, and they begin to pray, and then some of the other men in the yard see them, and one of them is the man telling the story, Boxer, and he yells out to the Muslim Brotherhood guys, hey, Rakim. But Rakim doesn't answer, he just continues praying, so Boxer walks up to him and says, hey, what the fuck are you doing? And then he kneels down, and Rakim says, leave us be, Boxer. We're praying. And Boxer says, no shit, but why's you facing this way? You always be facing that way when you pray. East, know what I'm saying? And then he points behind him to east. So basically, John made this guy pray the wrong way. And as Rakim figures out what happened, there's that same look of fear that the other guys in the shower had in the last issue. His face is just wide-eyed and just extremely terrified. Then we cut back to the present, where Boxer was telling the story, and Carney, the neo-Nazi guy, cuts in saying, you was real spooked, huh? And Boxer shoots back, fuck you, Carney. And then he turns back to the guy at the desk, and he says, I'm telling you, man, that motherfucker made them Muslims turn their backs on God. That's some serious shit. Then the guy with glasses, who's standing next to the desk, says, come on, Boxer, you really believe that? And Boxer crosses his arms and gets kind of mad and says, "Fuck yeah, I do. Saw it happen." Then Carney cuts in and says, "This is too much. I mean, this magic bullshit might play for these dumb spear chuckers, but I don't buy it. Not for 1 second." And the man at the desk says, "Too smart for that, huh, Carney?" And we're still not seeing his face or anything. We're just watching his hands as he puts a puzzle together. And Carney snaps back, "I ain't saying that. I'm saying we got a problem. That asshole," and the guy at the desk cuts him off saying, "What asshole?" And Carney answers, "The one we're talking about, Constantine." Then we cut to his flashback of when he met Constantine, and we see John sitting on the metal stairs in the common area, and he's shaking hands with Carney, and John saying, "Yeah?" And Carney replies, "Let me shake your hand, pal. My name's Carney. This here's Shorty." And then Shorty reaches out his hand and shakes it, and Shorty's like a really big, muscly guy, and he says, "Brother, I just want to say, the way you took them blacks in the showers was..." But John cuts him off saying, "None of your business. Got a square?" And if you didn't catch it by now, square means a pack of cigarettes. So it looks like John's trying to do the same thing that he did with the black guys in borrowing cigarettes from this gang so that they think they have a one-up on him, but he's actually got a plan. So Shorty didn't like John's rudeness, and he asks, "What'd you say?" But Carney steps in between them, and with a big smile on his face, he says, Sure. Give him one, Shorty." And as Shorty fishes for a cigarette, Carney's face gets very serious, and he says, "You know, you're wrong about it not being our business." And John looks at him and says, "Am I?" And Carney answers, "Damn straight. Anytime one of ours takes out one of them black bastards, we make it our business." And then Shorty hands John a lit cigarette, and he says, "Fucking mud people is what they are. Them, the Latinos, the Dago motherfuckers." And John interjects as he takes a puff saying, "Don't forget the Jews." And then Carney smiles and turns to Shorty and says, "Fucking A right, the Jews. Jew lawyers and judges stealing our country." And then Shorty smiles and looks at Carney and says, "You see, I told you he was down for the cause." And John looks at them and asks, "Am I then?" And Carney, with a big smile on his face, says, "Fuck yeah, brother. White power. White power." And then John gets a big grin on his face and he says, "Let me set you right here, Adolf. I'd spread me cheeks for every black cock in this hole, for I'd throw in with you lads." And Carney looks disgusted at this and says, "That's so? Well, let me set you real fucking straight, fancy boy. Lest you drop this loner bullshit, you will be spreading them cheeks, and a lot sooner than you think. You're a marked man." Then John stands up and kind of nonchalantly says, "Well, I'd better go wash up then." And then he walks up the stairs to his cell, but as he does, he turns around with a big smile on his face and says, "See you lads in the showers." But Carney's story is interrupted at that point by Ignacio, who is the leader of the Latino gang, and he says to Carney, "That why you come to see me then, essay? 'Cause England disrespected you? Shit." And Carney looks at him very angrily and says, "No, Ignacio. We paid you and your brother Lewis to send England a message. Join or die. You fucked it up." And Ignacio gets angered by this, and he stands and says, "That's bullshit, Carney. We didn't fuck up nothing. It went as planned." Then we cut to his flashback of what they were going to do to get John to join the white guys. And we see Ignacio's brother in the machine shop, I guess, of the prison, and he is grinding glass with a rock crusher, and he narrates over this. "Lewis ground glass in the machine shop, and I slipped it in the cabron's oatmeal at mess. For a fucking week, we watched that Vato eat glass. I bet my life on it." And in the panels underneath this, of course, we're seeing Ignacio pouring the glass into John's oatmeal. Then we see John sit at a table with Ignacio's brother Lewis, and as they eat, John is putting one spoonful after another into his mouth and swallowing this supposedly glass-filled oatmeal. And at first, Lewis is kind of watching him to see when that glass is going to take effect, but then he stops because all of a sudden, instead of John bleeding, Lewis begins to bleed from his mouth. And to Ignacio saying that he would bet his life on it that John ate the glass, Carney asks, "Is that so, Ignacio? What about your brothers?" Then we turn the page and we see Lewis, his brother, shoot up from the table and begin violently vomiting all over the place. And Ignacio sees this from behind the counter and he jumps over it saying, "What, Lewis?" And he rushes to his brother, and as Lewis begins to fall, Ignacio catches him, and with blood all over the place and him still vomiting, Ignacio holds his brother in his arms as Louis dies. And in the background, we see John very casually lighting a cigarette and smoking. Then we cut back to the room where Ignacio is telling the story, and Ignacio says, "He died in my arms. My own flesh. I killed him." Then Carney looks at him and says, "Hell you did. Son of a bitch must have switched mess with Louis." And Boxer, who's also very enraptured by the story, says, "For a fucking week, man? No way. Motherfucker got the jinx." And then Carney looks at him like he's stupid and says, "Fuck you and your fucking jinx, Boxer. He's just some sneaky fuck who's getting away with shitting on everybody. That's why we're here, right? The turd needs to be taught a lesson." But Ignacio stands up and he puts his hands in between them and says, "Lesson my ass, Holmes. I want the puta dead." And the man at the table still is just doing his puzzle, and he says, "So kill him." And Ignacio clenches his fist, and it's shaking with anger as he says, It's not so easy." And then the guy with glasses, who appears to be the right-hand man of the dude at the desk, says, "Don't tell me you're scared of this guy, Ignacio." Then he turns to the shadowed man at the desk who's lighting a cigarette, and the man in glasses says, "Can you believe this, boss?" And the boss answers, "What? How this one scrawny son of a fuck's got these tough guys chasing their tails? Sure, anything's possible. I've seen England in action." And then his right-hand man in glasses turns to the three gang leaders and says, "You boys heard about his run-in with Mr. Stark, right?" And right there, we finally get the reveal of who the man at the desk is, and that is Mr. Stark. And we did get mention of him in the last issue during Trailer's tour of the prison. He was the man who was the head of the Lifers, who Trailer said they don't care if they murder anybody because they're there for life anyway. So John should stay clear of them. But apparently he didn't take that advice, because we cut to the flashback of the guy in glasses telling his story about John's run-in with Mr. Stark. And we see Mr. Stark is playing cards at a table, and there's a couple people standing around watching them, and one of them is the guy with glasses, and he narrates, "Happened yesterday, in the day room, was a card game. Stark sat down for poker with some boys, and he was winning, as usual, but beating the pants off of them. You know how that goes. When Mr. Stark wants to play, he plays to win." Then we see Mr. Stark flip over his cards at the table, and he says, "Para ochos." So he's got 2 8s, and we see the other guy, I guess who's not dropped out, looking at his 2 cards, and he's got 2 kings. But he does not reveal that to anybody. He just says, "Beats me, take it." And I'm assuming he's losing on purpose so that he doesn't get killed by Mr. Stark. And Mr. Stark smiles gladly as he rakes in the cigarettes in the center of the table, and he says, "Ha! Am I the luckiest son of a bitch or what? I was scared you had a full boat for sure." And the man who did win but gave up says, "Nah, not me." But then he stands up like he's about to leave, and Mr. Stark says, "What? You leaving?" And the man gathers what's left of his cigarettes and says, "I'm tapped out, man. That's all I can lose." And as that man steps away, John steps up and asks, "Can I get in?" And with a big smile on his face, Mr. Stark waves his hand towards the chair and says, "What, fish? You want to play with me? Sit your ass down. Let's have some cards." So John sits down and he begins to play cards with them. And the man in glasses narrates, "So then England, he says he's never played poker before. Makes like he's some easy mark. And you know what? He was. The shit thing is, he learns the game real fast, but not the rules." So we see John playing with the 4 guys at the table. And by the rules, of course, the man in glasses meant that John's not letting Mr. Stark win. So John is just winning, and eventually everybody else is gone except him and Stark. And as they play together, the man in glasses narrates, "Him and Stark, they cleaned everybody out till it was just the 2 of them. Then England, he starts wailing on Stark. The fucking guy's playing like them cigarettes are $100 bills. I don't have to tell you about Stark's temper, right? He's getting so pissed, he looks like he's gonna have a shit hemorrhage. And I know for damn sure, I don't have to tell you not to fuck with Mr. Stark. He's the king of the lifers, a bull killer, the mother of all motherfuckers. But y'all know that. England, though, he didn't." So in the panels, we're seeing Stark get madder and madder. His face is getting redder and redder. All the while, John's smile is just getting bigger and bigger. Then we get a panel of Stark dropping a large amount of cigarettes in the center of the table, and the narration continues saying, "5 minutes till head count. Last hand. Stark starts betting huge. He's got a pair showing with the trip in the hole. He has to win. But like I said, England's playing like he's got to have every goddamn smoke Philip Morris ever rolled. So we see John check his cards, then he grabs a bunch of cigarettes, and he says, call. Then Mr. Stark gets very angry, and he says, bullshit! You ain't gonna pull that straight. Then Stark picks up the deck, and he throws John a card, and he says, last card. And as he checks his card, he pushes another hand of cigarettes forward and says, raise again. And John just stares at him smoking. We don't even see him check his card. He just says, I'll see you then. And he takes a handful of cigarettes, but then he pushes a bunch more forward with that handful and says, and raise. And then Stark looks at the pile of cigarettes, and he looks back at his cards, and he puts them down. And then when he looks back up, you can see he's got a very defeated look on his face. And then it kind of turns bitter as he throws his cards down and says, fold. And then John, with a big smile, says, well, that's it then. And then he leans forward to pick up the cigarettes, and as he collects them in a pile, he says, been a pleasure, Squat. But he's cut off as Stark reaches out and grabs his hand, and then he says, not so fast, fuck. I want to see. So he takes John's cards, and he flips them one by one, and we can see the ones that are revealed already say 5, 6, 7, 9. So to get this straight, he only needed the 8. But before Stark can turn over the last card, Boxer interrupts the story and asks, he get this straight? And Mr. Stark says, nah, had an ace. And he points to the wall next to them, and we see the cards that John had taped to the wall next to his desk. So if you don't follow poker, just so you know, John didn't have anything except an ace high, and definitely would have lost had Mr. Stark completed his hand and not folded. But Stark looks at the men after showing them the cards on the wall, and he says, he bluffed me. And Ignacio can't believe this, and he asks, damn, you break his arm? And Stark smiles and says, nah, I cut it off. But then he starts to laugh and he says, just kidding, didn't touch him. But Carney doesn't like that, and he says, wait a minute, you telling me you let this guy fuck you and walk away? You got a rep. And to this, Carney gets kind of mad and he says, don't you tell me what I got, bitch. I'll tell you. I got a prison to run. Then the man with glasses says, Stark here, he recognizes talent when he sees it. And as he says this, we see something shift in the shadows behind Stark, but we're not exactly sure what it is. And Stark says, you pussies practically wet yourselves, you're so freaked by this guy. I like that. You got no stones. England now, he showed me. He got stones. He didn't fuck me. Then we see out of the shadows, a hand comes out with the last piece of the puzzle that needed to be inserted. And as he's putting it in, we hear the man in the shadows say, got that right. Couldn't happen anyway. We both like being on top. And as we turn the page, we get a full splash page of John revealing himself to the other members of the gangs, and he's got a big smile on his face because it seems him and Stark are now partners in running this prison. And that, my friends, is the end of the issue. So if you guys have any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can email me at planes, trains, and comic books, all one word, @gmail.com, and we will see you on the next one.